Hey everybody, Edo here, and as promised, this is part 2 of things I did differently with the Legendary Creatures campaign. Now, the campaign is still live. Let me get this out of the way. I sincerely appreciate any support, backing, spreading the word. We're heading into the final week. Please and thank you. But at the start of the campaign, I had a video, which I'll link in the description, about the things that I've done differently in this campaign. And now that we're 2.5 weeks through it, I feel like I can provide insight into whether those were good things or bad things or how it worked out. So if you haven't seen the first video, see the first video. I'm certainly referring to it. And again, I welcome support on the campaign. But to get through it, let's jump right in. I have notes because I'm basically going through that list, and I have some added things and that kind of thing. So, one, I had removed a $1 backer tier, that support tier. I decided to use the sort of whatever you want to support, no reward line, because Kickstarter's now added that at the top always, and it seemed redundant to have the two. This seems to have gone fine. Like, it's hard to say how much more valuable it is for people not to see the $1 tier and jump right into the main tier. But for sure, I have as many... I looked through all of my campaigns, and right now I have comparable amount of $1 pledges between them. Even arguably maybe a little bit more, because I have almost as much $1 pledges in Legendary Creatures right now as I did in Herbaceous. And Herbaceous was about... this is about 600 backers right now, 5-something. Herbaceous ended at 2,100. So you'd think it'd have, maybe 3 times as many, 4 times as many, but they're comparable. So if the concern is, well, people won't know it exists, I think all the people, the movers and the shakers, the people you're like hoping do $1 pledges, even if they're not going to support, still supported for $1. And lots of backers who weren't sure. Again, I didn't see a huge fallout. I would have expected, if it didn't work, there to be no $1 pledges, or 3 or 5, but there are plenty. So, for that regard, I think it's fine to remove the $1 pledge from my experience. Do your own research, but I will likely not include it in future campaigns, unless, as I said in my first video, I was doing a pledge manager and I wanted people to be able to sign up for the pledge manager. So, another thing I talked about was I was in my own category, or a smaller group of people that was just putting the shipping in the reward tiers instead of having a shipping section. I did do the shipping section this time. Overall, I think that it was fine. Like, I didn't see a terrible confusion across the board or any reason to feel like it wasn't as good as the other. Again, some of these are a little harder to say, well, that really worked or didn't work. I think it was fine. Now, what I don't think worked, and I may still change heading into the end of the campaign, perhaps, I have to think about it, because I don't want to make it too complicated, but I may, is a duo tier. So what I did was I added in that shipping section the ability, an explanation of what you should add if you want 2 copies. Instead of having a duo tier, and I certainly have some people that have backed for multiple copies, but I don't feel like it's a clear call to action. I don't feel like many people read that information and deep dive on that information enough that you're selling it. Like, the duo tier sells it. For sure, for Sunset Over Water, the next campaign I'm doing, which is a lower price point, and I think a great gift for your mom, gift for your friend type of game. It's sort of in that Herbaceous category. I think I will definitely be doing a duo tier because I want that I think a duo tier is a call to action to a casual person. A sophisticated Kickstarter backer is going to go down and see shipping and figure out and know what they want. And group European pledges do that, for sure. But I think there's a sell opportunity. And again, I think Legendary Creatures is that the more expensive the game, the less likely people are going to buy it too. But I think in the smaller category, the gift category, the $9 games, the $19 games, I think having that buy 2 is a big deal. It's always been a driver on previous campaigns, and I just haven't seen that much motion here. So my guess is not having a duo tier is not having a specified duo tier is stronger. Having it having it is better than not having it, but writing it in the page. I could be mistaken, but that was something I noticed. The shipping wasn't a big deal, but the duo pledge one was. Group pledges were fine. That's still people saying, hey, what happens if I'm in Europe and I want 5 or 6 copies? A lot more, interestingly, Asia, Singapore, China, Taiwan, Japan, those markets seem to be picking up and looking for more sort of retail level backing. So another thing I did was I had the Herbaceous Kickstarter pack, and I had it as a bundle add-on. It worked. It's not elegant. It did cause some confusion. It's one of those things where I was like, man, this is sort of in Pledge Manager category. I think it's more of a service. In other words, I've been pretty restrictive about these Kickstarter, the little packet Kickstarter exclusive bundle, not doing it off of Kickstarter. So in some ways, having it available in another Kickstarter is just, letting people have an avenue to eventually get it. I think it's probably more hassle than it's worth generally. But at the same time, so I liked including the pack. I didn't think it was elegant to the backer, and I don't think people know about it as much. So from my perspective, I feel like if you're not doing a pledge manager, you really got to think hard about how you would do that, and it's tricky to carry it across multiple campaigns. I talked about having the big bold logo image with the play button in the middle and some of the challenges with that. Generally, I liked it. It was big, bold, and I didn't mind the play button, and I had it that way for most of the campaign. Just recently, I ended up changing it because heading into the end, I wanted to do the funded banner, and it just started looking awkward, and I felt like I could change it up. And so now there's a little bit of a box, and it's a little bit structured differently. You should check it out if you saw the original when I made that comment. So now it's, I would say, a little bit more common, a little bit more traditional, but it does pop. I do really like it. And some might argue it's better now. One thing that's clear to me, and I'm going to be doing this in the Sunset campaign, is there's an argument that says change your banner, your lead and main image often. Like, I don't know about daily. Like, there's the people who change it to say day 3, day 4, day 5, but it's the same image. I think there's an argument to say big change it, because ultimately you get so much traffic from Kickstarter, and they're like eyeing the covers, and different people like different things. It's like A/B testing in mobile and Facebook. You A/B test ads all the time to see which one performs better, and you just work to that ad that performs the best. And you can't really A/B test on Kickstarter. Any day's any day, and they're all. I mean, you wouldn't be able to get exacting information, but I do think refreshing that image into it, making it actually different, could be very powerful. It could hurt you as well, but I think it's worth trying. With Sunset Over Water, we have all these incredible landscapes from Beth, so I think I'll probably try to do it in a way where we're swapping out the landscapes. So it's like a sort of somewhat standard, but the landscape's changing and it looks... I don't know. I got to figure that out. I'm still in the middle of Legendary Creatures, so I got to stay focused. But that was something I thought about and would be cool doing. So I did that big hero graphic at the top. That was new for me. Worked great. Loved it. Age player time was a little small, but only 1 or 2 people followed up and asked me that question. Generally, I think it was fine. I had mentioned Man vs. Meeple and integrating, non-paid reviews and paid reviews. Since then, there's been more discussions and activity on the boards. I'm going to do a video about that. I'm going to actually spend a dedicated time talking about that, and I think there's not enough time here, and I got too much stuff going on. But I will post that and go into that deeper. I didn't do a print and play. Seemed fine. Wasn't even getting people asking. I think at some stage the games are heavy, complicated enough, like Legendary Creatures, that it's not a big deal. Certainly on the lightweight games, I get asked it all the time. I had said I liked the Meeple prototyping and doing it early. It absolutely worked out great. Daft Concept did a great job on it, and they're based in the U.S. So something to consider. Good for the campaign. What I do regret is I didn't leverage it as well as I could. For Liftoff, I did a great job. I took those little guys around, I was filming them, I was taking photos of them, I was tweeting it. I built a lot around those characters. In this case, with the familiars, these guys, I showed them off and stuff, but I didn't leverage it in the way I had on Liftoff. Like, if you probably, I think it's like hashtag Liftoff contest or hashtag Liftoff Gen Con, and you go back to that hashtag and look at those photos, they're awesome. They're awesome. I mean, like, they're great. And because I gave out meeples at Gen Con and people were taking pictures. It wasn't just my pictures. Super cool. So I think there's an opportunity there. I talked about animating GIFs. I felt they worked well and were not terribly expensive to make compared to anything else. So that worked out great. Some things that I could have changed, but I didn't, to touch back on. And again, if you haven't seen part one, see part one, because you see the before ed. I could film them next to each other. You see the before ed, and this is the after ed, right? I never really came up with a good solution for like Canada friendly and Australia friendly, so I stuck with EU friendly. Some people, brought that up, and it's been a conversation. One interesting one was Switzerland, which I guess isn't in the EU, but is near the EU. I don't know exactly how that works, but there was a conversation around Switzerland, sort of like people in New Zealand wanting the pricing of people in Australia, which in my case, I do that one. So, timing. I did a video on when you should run your campaign and how you should do it, and I talked about all the things I learned and how I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it when I'm going to do it anyway, despite this wall of information. And it has been painful. It has been painful. It's funny. I think a lot of the general thought on the matter is avoid June, July, August, that type of time period. I've sort of come to the conclusion that that's sort of the what people think when you're a smaller person who's worried about dates and timelines. You know who's not worried about that? The big ones. Cool Mini or not worried about that. Star Realms, not worried about that. What were some of the other big? Gloomhaven, not worried about that. So what that means is I was, and other people, right, up against some serious competition over the last couple weeks for dollars. And it's not the same games, but you absolutely see, especially if your game's more expensive with, Legendary Creatures 39, so it's, it's not 9, or it's 19 like Herbaceous. If a person has money on your, especially international folks, if they're like, well, that's whatever, $60 or $55 with shipping, there's that, but then there's this other game. I don't have enough money for both. So there's a lot of notable amounts of cancellations when these big new titles suck up the money. I don't want to get into the conversation about whether or not Kickstarters for indie or megas or I think board gaming is great. All these platforms are growing. Any given Sunday, there's winners and losers and dynamic shift in marketplaces and platforms. I don't want to have that conversation. But for sure, if you are running a campaign and one of these big games drop, you'd know it. I knew it because I was like, oh, at the same hour, I lost these, 5 people. What just happened? Kickstarter. Oh, Game of Thrones, Cool Mini or not. Okay. Oh, it's 150 to get, So, this was a challenging period. There was a lot of media for a lot of different games. I still did a good job of getting coverage. But I'm good at that. Good at that's not the right word, but I spend a lot of time cultivating that. I think there are probably campaigns that got washed over for sure. In the last video, I was going back and forth on whether or not to do social avatars. I did remove it from the page. I was happy about that. I added it to an update, which I liked. And even along the way, some people asked me for more, which I provided. So I felt like that was a pretty good balance and probably what I'm going to do go forward if it's a game that avatars make sense. Didn't run any BGG ads or contests. Felt okay about it. Actually, BGG reached out during the campaign to talk about it, see if I'd be interested in doing some ads. And, it I think for the right games it's worthwhile, but when you've spent all of your ad dollars in different places, it's hard to jump in because it's not an it's an expensive ad set. It's much easier to say I'm going to do a $20 experiment on Facebook or on Twitter or on this person's, there's this guy's website and he's selling it for, for the month, this square ad for $30. It's just easier to like tack on than it is to like jump in and do BGG ads, especially if you haven't budgeted, which I hadn't. Retailer tier has been okay. I didn't, because I didn't have a special. I'm just watching and learning as other people are trying that out and figuring that out. There's a lot of learning to go there. I talked about, I had mentioned the idea of the multiple tiers, and as I mentioned, I think that was a big learner for me, which was I really think a duo tier performs better than just saying you can add another copy on. Like 100 backers better. I mean, like significantly better. I could be wrong. Couple other things I had sort of hemmed and hawed about the how to play videos. Mine being so long, I'm really not. I think that could have been better. Like, I don't exactly know what I could have. Actually, I do know what I could have done. You know what I could have done? Jamie Stegmaier just the other day blogged a post about Hear No Evil, or You Don't Know Where I don't know. Remember the name of the game, but it's the Thing game that was up on Kickstarter, and how amazing their how to play game highlight video was. It was stellar. It was stellar. So well done, and exactly how to be both informative and captivating, right? And I don't think the how to play video. I mean, you want people to know how to play, but you don't want them to like. You sort of want them to like. You got to be. You're still on your page trying to sell. This isn't somebody who bought it who then is just going to watch to learn how to play. You're still sort of like trying to get them, right? So I think that's part of it. Social goals. I hadn't done a lot of it, and I have to say, and I have to get the right feel for it, but social goals and stretch goals, I think, are more and more important. The more and more competition is forcing everyone and grabbing their attention. In some ways, a lot of backers will support and be part of it the whole way through, but there's a category that sort of is paying attention to Kickstarter, and they got $100 each month, and they have no qualms moving that $100 over to here, over there to get whatever game they really, really want. And you grabbing those people and their attention and their interest and maintaining it is important. Sort of a reason maybe not to have as long a campaign, but I think more importantly, I think social goals and those types of things help do that. So in a way, and this is really true for mobile free-to-play, oftentimes engagement and virality is great, but you also need that retention. You need both, and I think that's part of it. I think I had mentioned in the video using not necessarily shipping everything from home based on volume. I'm not going to know that for some more time, probably not until manufacturing. The last thing I'm going to note is I did this different thing, which is we had what I would say is our stretch goals have been very focused on high-end little adders to the game and the componentry more than big broad gameplay additions. With Legendary Creatures, it was really out of the box, built the way we wanted it, and we've gone big on the components and stuff. So like the familiars, the meeples it didn't matter if it just funded, we were going to do that. So, and the quality of the component. So it wasn't one of these things where I took all the stuff that was already planned and then doled it out. I could have. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I could have. But I do have of stretch goals, but I wanted to do something different, and so I did this creature survey thing. And if you're back, you can jump right in and get into it. But where I said we're planning on an additional creature, with stretch goals to add. And what I mean by planning, because this isn't pre-made. A lot of times in stretch goals and everything's already done. And even if you have a choice, they've already done both of them. Or like, it's not true for everything, but it isn't like bona fide. We're going to make what the campaign all votes and engages on. And in this case, it was like I've gone through every stretch goal, a new survey, or sort of when I do an update, where I say, okay, everyone name their favorite legendary and fantastic creatures. Here's a swath of ability things we could add. Let's vote. Okay, we got all these votes. Here are the top 10 from the voting. Let's vote again. Let's whittle it down. Let's whittle down the abilities. Right now, we're in the process of whittling down to the final 2 creatures that are going to go head-to-head, so to speak, and the final 2 abilities that are going to go head-to-head, so to speak. Then there'll be a final vote, and then we'll make that. And so what's different about it, not than every campaign, but that's not, I don't know what that is. That's going to do it, and then we got to source the art, and we got to make it all. So it's this little bump, but I put a little box around it, so I knew, like, well, this is going to take about a month of play testing and whatever, and that still fits in our development window. So I'm going to do it. But the backer engagement has been great. I really liked it, and I think more of those things are going to be interesting, and I in lots of ways like it more than stretch goals, because it's just more engaging and community and backer based, and so. I don't know how much room there is in Sunset Over Water, but I do think that's something I want to play with and work through. So I got to figure it out, but I think there's something there. I think that covers it. Again, the point here was, I said, here are the things I was going to do differently, and the point of this video is, I looked at what I did differently, and here's my reaction to it. I don't know, I'm not going to do this before every campaign, I like to mix it up, but this... doing a campaign always brings you back to what's happening, what's current, the emotional, the roller coaster, how you feel, when another campaign will, it's a rush and it's a ride and your emotions are like this. And so there's that whole aspect to it. But always push. Always try to be better. Always try to improve campaign to campaign. And I think that's really important. So anyway, subscribe, share all that good stuff. Thanks for watching.